Hi, the purpose of this video is to talk about the Flowery Branch Creek area of Lake Lanier in Georgia.
There is a Redeemer, Jesus, God's own Son, precious Lamb of God, Messiah, Holy One.
Okay, so this is part of a series where we're talking about the creek bed characteristics and the whole creek characteristics in Lake Lanier in Georgia. And this is Flowery Branch Creek, and just to orient you a little bit, this is Three Sisters Island. This is Big Creek here, Chattahoochee Bay. This is where Flowery Branch Creek comes in, opens up into this area here that's known as Flowery Branch Bay. This is Three Sisters Island. This is the main channel. And Flowery Branch Creek is has a very small area that it drains, so it doesn't pour a whole lot of water into Lake Lanier. But its most dominant fact comes from the idea that there's a treatment plant on the creek, so it does add a lot of fertility, a lot of nitrogen, a lot of phosphorus flow into the lake through Flowery Branch Creek. And the flow is kind of restricted by a bottleneck here where the McEver Road Bridge is. So I've divided it up into three parts. The part of the creek near Hideaway Bay in the marina is the part that I would say is most strongly affected by the inflow of nutrients. And then there's this area here between McEver Road Bridge and the bay, which is moderately affected by the nutrients. And weak would be the wrong word for how this area out here is affected, but this area out here is right next to the channel, so it's strongly affected by the channel. It's also strongly affected by the nutrients, and here's why. What happens as the water's warming up in the summer, in June, is there's this migration from the north of the lake. You get the striped bass and the blueback herring, and they're beginning to get uncomfortable as the surface water warms, and as the thermocline gets deeper, that pushes the fish deeper below the thermocline. And at the same time, you have some hypoxia moving up from the bottom, and that pushes the fish into that wedge of water above the hypoxia and below the thermocline that's beginning to get occupy less of the lake. The wedge of the water is getting skinnier and skinnier in the northern parts of the lake, so the fish move south. And what's happening is as the fish get to about Three Sisters Island, they notice the plankton. The bait fish notice the plankton, so all the blueback herring is like, whoa, there's a lot more plankton here for us to eat in the mouth of Flowery Branch Bay, so they kind of take a left and start spending more time in this area. And the water's deep enough so that they're comfortable. The main channel right here is still between 120 and 140 feet deep. So the bluebacks kind of pause here for a little while. And of course those stripers coming down, there's still that comfortable wedge of water because it's 120 to 140 feet deep in the main channel. And there's all the food that's stopped here to snack on the plankton. So the result from a fishing point of view is that starting sometime in June, not usually June 1st, but by middle June, there's a good number of baits and a good amount of striped bass and some bigger spotted bass in this area. So sometime in June and through sometime in August, this area out here in front of Three Sisters Island, into the mouth of the bay, and so on, becomes really good for trolling lead core for striped bass, and you'll pick up some nice big spotted bass as well, and that's why. Now, some point in August, the thermocline gets deeper and deeper, the hypoxic layer gets shallower and shallower. So at some point, fish move on close to the dam, and the fishing by the dam gets a little better, but that's why there's this sort of pause of all the bait and a lot of fish right here in front of Three Sisters Island, beginning sometime in June, stretching usually most years until sometime in August. All right, well, let's talk about other seasons and the other parts of the Flowery Branch Creek part of Lake Lanier. So let's zoom a little more. on those sections. Alright, well, let's see if we can make it go away. Alright, and you can even see all the photosynthesis that's going on in response. This is just all the phytoplankton that responds to the nutrients coming from the treatment plant. Now this area here would be fabulously interesting for fishing in April and May if it weren't for the marina and all the boat slips. So I like to fish with jugs in April and May because I'm targeting catfish. I have no doubt there's tons of catfish here in April and May, but they're hard to fish with jugs because when catfish get on the jugs, they pull them to the cover. Just getting to the jug and getting the fish in the boat is hard with all this marina business here. The other thing that the marina ends up affecting the fishing is there's a lot of boat traffic through this little narrow area and under the bridge. So even though the bridge is a great place to fish, I prefer not to fish it during the day on busy days just because it puts you in the middle of all this boat traffic. But the bridge is a fabulous spot to fish at night. You've got an area of the channel here, the creek bed that gets to about 25 or 30 feet deep here, and then there's a saddle. It gets a little shallower right under the bridge, maybe about 20 feet deep, and then as you go toward the main lake it gets deep quickly. So depending on the exact time of year, just cruise around here a short distance either side of the bridge, see where you're marking most of the bait. Sometimes it's going to be right under the bridge, sometimes it's going to be a little bit toward the lake side, sometimes it's a little bit toward the marina side. And if you like to pick a spot to fish at night, put out a hydroglow light, that kind of thing. The hydroglow light, if you find bait when you're just cruising around, the hydroglow light will attract the bait to the light, and then you throw out a few lines. And there are times you can get in lots of crappie, there are times you get into some striper, times you can get into some catfish doing that. But if I was going to do the fish the bridge thing, I'd make sure I was set up, because on any given night you're not sure what kind of predator all the bait you attract is going to attract, so I like to be ready for all of them. The other feature here, if you are going to still fish this area, I don't mind jugging, but you can still fish it, is that this is a shallow, relatively cut off area from the main lake, which means that it warms up first in late March. So I'm always looking at the water temperature wondering, hey, when's it going to get to 60 degrees? Because that's when the catfish turn on, that's when the bass turn on in a little different way, at least more for my kind of fishing. So, and that happens in this Hideaway Bay area a little sooner than the rest of the lake. So, 6 Mile Creek and Flat Creek, we might be waiting for the first week of April before it gets to 60 degrees. But it might be late March when it gets to 60 degrees in this area here. But the same is true, a lot of the catfish, a lot of the bait move out when it gets to about 75 degrees. So this area is going to heat up first, and this one's going to get to 75 degrees a little sooner in May. And when it gets to, at some point, the thermocline gets too deep, the surface water gets too warm, the fish move out. And so that's probably going to happen by mid-May here, whereas 6 Mile Creek and Flat Creek, that off switch might not get hit until closer to late May, sometime around June 1st. So this is going to warm up first, but it also gets uncomfortably hot for the fish too. The other thing with the low water flow and all the photosynthesis, all the phytoplankton, is that this part's going to be one of the first areas of lake that you might get into a little hypoxia. Once the oxygen levels start to drop, the fish are going to move out into the deeper water. Okay, so that's Flowery Branch Creek and how it affects Lake Lanier. Now let me go ahead and zoom back out and talk a little bit more about, let me go to the contour map. Alright, so let's look at the contour map here. And this is your boat launch. Van Pew is right here, so you can launch at Van Pew, take a right, go into the shallower water, go up the creek, take a left. Here's Three Sisters Island, here's the main channel, depending on where you want to fish. I don't really worry too much about, technically, am I over the creek channel? Am I over the main channel? Am I approaching these features out by Three Sisters Island? Sometimes in June through August you just tool around out here trolling, and then you mark where all the bait is, and wherever the bait is you start making your smaller loops. Once you found the bait or once you've hooked up with a couple striper, you stay in the spot that's working. And the other reason, other than the fact that it tends to hold a lot of fish, I like to troll these areas, is there's a lot of underwater features here, 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 here. And all those underwater features, when you're pulling, your baits may only be 20 or 30 feet deep, but those underwater features tend to hold a little more bait, attract a few more stripers. So I've caught a lot more fish over the humps than I have, strictly speaking, over the main channel. So get out there, Flowery Branch Creek, get you some fish this summer.
I tremble at the thought of Judgment Day. Lord, I am not ready. Please don't return just yet, for all my sins are put away. My cross is on the floor, and I would burn.